You want huge powerful minions and tank level defense at the same time? We got an Abomination hitting for millions, and a T-Rex that roars your army into overdrive, and defenses that hit just as hard as the offense. And this without any snapshotting. This isn't just strong, it's unstoppable. Welcome to the Turbo Monsters. Hey everyone, it's Pixel here, and welcome to the final endgame build guide for Turbo Monsters. The first thing I want to emphasize is that this build's got no snapshotting or switch-ups. We have one setup and one setup only. Our main minion is Abomination, and we summon it from Skeleton Rogues and Golems. For each Skeleton Rogue we consume, Abomination gains 8% attack speed from this node, 2% movement speed from this node, and 25% more multiplicative damage from this one. And since we are able to consume around 20 to 25 rogues to assemble it, that's a lot of juicy numbers. But how are we able to consume that many rogues when our max skeletons are only 9? Well, we spec full points into both the passive node, giving us 40% chance to resummon a skeleton 3 seconds after it dies, in combination with the skill tree node giving 40% more chance, accounting to a total of 80% chance for a skeleton to be resummoned. This way, most of the skeletons will reappear and be absorbed over and over again during the summoning process, making Abomination so much more stronger. But this is only the beginning of what really powers up this monstrosity. Abomination's primary damage output comes from its 2 skills, Stomp and Double Strike. Stomp is gained by consuming golems, and we consume 2 of them by speccing into this skill tree node of Summon Bone Golem. For both of these golems combined, Abomination gains 240% more multiplicative damage and 180% increased area of effect with Stomp. That's a lot. And we also gain the 25% more multiplicative damage bonus from the minion type bonus node as well. And the best thing about speccing into Stomp, we also reduce its base cooldown of 6 seconds down to 4.5 seconds with this node as well. And the cooldown recovery speed doesn't end there. We also go to the right side of the tree here and spec into the 2 nodes, giving us 20% increased cooldown recovery speed as well as some awesome multiplicative damage. In addition to the final node giving us even 30% more increased cooldown recovery speed. Combine this with a lot of cooldown recovery speed from our idols as well, and our Abomination is using Stomp all the time. All of the increased cooldown recovery speed also benefits Abomination's other skill, Double Strike. Now this is a very powerful melee attack dealing 2 strikes in quick succession, and reducing the cooldown time to such high levels skyrockets Abomination's damage output, as both of these skills do insanely much more damage than its basic attack. And as you can see, in this skill tree we end up at 34 skill points, so we have to stack 14 additional skill points from the baseline. Where do all of these come from? Don't worry, we'll look at that soon. Let's switch focus to our other bad boy, the T-Rex being summoned from our primordial unique relic, Tyrant Skull. Now, to summarize this entire item, the T-Rex gains different stats based on our attributes, so it gets melee damage per strength, physical penetration per intelligence, crit multiplier per attunement, and attack speed per dexterity. This means that the most efficient way to make it stronger is by speccing attributes. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because other minions also gain 20% of the stats from this item for 12 seconds after the T-Rex roars, which it does constantly for us. This means that Abomination gets 20% of all the stats the T-Rex gains, which makes it a lot more interesting. And since the T-Rex rarely even gets up close to enemies before Abomination has slaughtered them, Abomination getting 20% of these stats is arguably the most important thing about this item. And it doesn't only get the stats from stacking attributes, it also gets 20% of the more multiplicative damage per 1% of our endurance. Now this is awesome, because it gives us a very good reason to cap our endurance as well, giving us both defense and damage output at the same time. And it doesn't end there, as this is only the beginning of our endurance journey. Now if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider hitting the thumbs up like button. Speccing into Endurance gives us a great incentive to use the face of the Mountain Shield, giving 1% block chance per 2% endurance above the cap. With 183% endurance and block chance from our shield as well, we end up at a respectable block chance and block damage mitigation. With our high strength, we also get a lot of armor, and end up at over 4000. And the great thing about stacking strength is that our intelligence is equal to our strength by using the Cleaver Solution Axe. We got a 2 LP tier 7 and tier 5 minion melee damage stats on it as well, which is quite neat. The intelligence gives us a lot of ward retention, flat minion health, and increased minion skill damage, as well as physical penetration for our T-Rex, and 20% of that for Abomination. This is why endurance and strength are the 2 most important stats to spec into for this build. Apart from that, health and any minion damage is king, especially minion melee damage and minion physical damage. Minion crit chance and crit multiplier are also very important. I've gone for the Mantle of the Pale Ox as my body armor, mainly because of the 2 great defensive stats where a large portion of our damage is redirected to our highest health minion, as well as increased health for us and our minions. Combine this with its strength stat and our lucky 2 LP roll as well, and we're looking at a very nice armor here. To boost our defense even further, we go for the dominance of the Tundra helmet, giving us a much needed 400 flat armor, strength, and reduced crit damage bonus taken, as well as the awesome endurance and decent strength legendary stats. Now you could swap these two out with exalted items and forge the last bear set as affixes onto them to get the 2 set item bonuses of endurance threshold per strength and plus 30 strength, which are immense stats for this build. But I was never able to craft good enough pieces all around for this to work, so I went another way. We go for a low life setup by having a ward gain per missing health affix on our gloves. I would recommend having a tier 7 affix of this stat to maximize your ward a lot. As you can see, I only have a tier 5 stat, so plenty of room for improvement here. Further, we use the last steps of the living boots and 5 points in the acolyte passive node to give us even more ward. Our resistances are all capped, apart from the lightning resistance being 2% below the cap and the fire resistance definitely needing some work. There's room for more LP on the phantom grip rings to fix that. All of our extra skill points come from our gear. We gain 2 from our amulet, which is a perfect fit for this build, giving us a great combo of implicit stats with resistances, attributes and movement speed, and plus 2 to all skills. I have crafted a tier 7 increased minion damage and area for minion skills as well, which makes this into a powerhouse item. Further, we have 2 phantom grip rings giving us 4 more skill points, as well as the 1 point from Cleaver Solution. The Tyrant Skull also gives us 3 skill points by default and another 4 points with the tier 7 plus level to Abomination stat, making all of the points a total of 14 additional skill points. This gives us a lot of extra multiplicative damage, which is outweighing most other stats and mechanics, at least in terms of damage. For alternative gear, you could go for 2 red rings. These are very rare and hard to come by, especially on Self-Found and Circle of Fortune, and since Phantom Grip rings gives us a much needed skill points and mini crit chance in addition to having a higher chance for higher LP, these are very good options and what I've gone for. The red rings are definitely much better for survivability, but the Phantom Grip rings are much better for damage output. If you go with the red rings, make sure to have some increased mini critical strike chance on your helmet or body armor. So if you're enjoying this video, make sure to let me know by hitting the thumbs up like button. Let's look at how to play this build. First, we assemble Abomination from skeleton rogues and golems. Then we cast 1 Dread Shade and Infernal Shade each on our T-Rex and Abomination. If the T-Rex dies, remember to rebuff it with the 2 shades. Let's do a full echo to show how this build works for clearing. For echoes, I prefer going with the protective minion stance to keep the minions close and tight, but for bosses, I switch to the aggressive stance to ensure they all stay close to the boss and attack it. Now before we proceed, I want to give you a heads up that I'll go ahead and post many more build guide videos for Last Epoch soon, so make sure to click the subscribe button to not miss out on those. And if you really love my content, then you can click the join button below the video to support me or support me through the Patreon link in the video description. Thank you so much. Let's look at some Aberoth gameplay, and stick around to get some tips and insights about the build as we go along. Let's look at the ailments we inflict here. First of all, we got a decent armor shred. It could definitely be higher, and we could boost that by speccing more points into the Aegis Fall Necromancer passive node or more attack speed. If you want to do that, the Moonlight Pyre node is where you should extract points from. However, by my calculations, the damage output is higher by leaving it as is. We also have the Mark for Death curse on him by having a small chance on our idols for minions to mark for death. This is important, as all bosses that take some time to kill are eventually marked, giving them 25% reduction to all resistances. And that's Aberoth down, in around 42 seconds. Not bad, at least when keeping in mind that there's a lot of room for improvement on gear here, as well as the build missing 2 passive points from not being at level 100. As for Uber Aberoth, I gave it a try and got him down to 50% health before a laggy Void Shuriken took me out. Honestly, grinding that fight isn't really my cup of tea. It's not the kind of content I enjoy the most. But the important part is that the build clearly has the power to take him down, especially considering my gear has much room for improvement. So if Uber Aberoth is your target, it's safe to say this build can definitely handle it. For the skills and passive progressions of this build, follow the detailed progression sliders in the build planner in the video description. At level 4, specialize in Summon Skeleton. At level 8, specialize in Bone Curse and go straight for the Merciless node to buffer your skeletons with it. When Summon Bone Golem is unlocked, specialize in that, and replace Bone Curse with the Sample Abomination as soon as it's unlocked. At level 35, specialize in Dreadshade, and finally at level 50, specialize in Infernal Shade. Now keep in mind that I'll be posting many more build guides for Last Epoch, so click the subscribe button to not miss out on those. And if you like this one, you should definitely check out my build guide videos by clicking on the video card on the screen.